Want to know the 7 principles you should focus on to help you lead a virtual team? Watch this video and I will share with you the 7 principles I use that have helped me lead virtual teams in 2 separate industries. If you find value in the information, please share and click the subscribe button below. Hello, my name is Christopher Houston, and today I want to talk to you about leading virtual teams. I use a lot of the principles out of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, so I'm going to show you how those principles can be applied to learning how to lead virtual teams. I have led virtual teams in the gaming industry and in the federal government, and using principles out of the book, The 7 Habits, has helped me greatly. The 7 principles are: be proactive. Begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. Think win-win. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Synergize. Sharpening the saw. First, let's start with being proactive. When leading a team, you must be proactive. Being proactive means more than just taking initiative. It means taking the responsibility for yourself and your actions and the actions of your team. It's hard enough to take responsibility for yourself, but even harder to take responsibility for the actions of others. But as a virtual team leader, that's exactly what you're signing up for. In the book, it talks about our behavior being the function of our decisions. In leading virtual teams, your team's behavior is the function of the decisions that you make. Your decisions have to make sense, not just to you. They have to make sense to your team. The easiest way for your decisions to make sense is to make sure your decisions are fair across the board. We must be proactive in our efforts to be fair across the board when dealing with virtual teams. Be proactive with the things such as equipment. You want to make sure each team member has the same setup at home as they had at the office. Be proactive when it comes to your communications plan. Make sure it's clear how you're going to communicate and take responsibility for your team's communication. Be proactive with taskings. Make sure the taskings are clear and concise, and make sure you are able to follow up and give feedback on taskings as if you were in the office. Remember, being proactive means continuing to take responsibility for yourself, your team, and making sure your team is taken care of. The second principle is begin with the end in mind. When leading a virtual team, you want to be able to articulate the end game, or as we used to say in the Air Force, you want to be able to show them the big picture, especially in virtual meetings. In virtual meetings such as with Skype or WebEx, we want to articulate exactly what the meeting is for. Do it right up front. We want to be able to give a list of topics we will be covering, and we want to take notes to make sure all topics are covered. For my meetings, I use a template. It's a template that I have used for about 6 years now. It's fairly simple. I will leave a copy of the template in the description below. The template has a place for a few things: the subject, the date and location of the meeting, purpose of the meeting, the facilitator, the scribe, who's going to take notes, the required attendees, the optional attendees, the agenda, that's one of the most important things, a step-by-step list of what we're going to go over, and the action items for follow-up. Meetings are a focal point of leading virtual teams. We don't want our meetings to go more than an hour, and we want to give the participants a starting and an ending point. When we begin with the end in mind, our meetings will be more productive, efficient, and effective. The third principle is put first things first. When leading virtual teams, we must execute the most important priorities first, then move to the next priority taskings. We should also relay this information to our team members. Stephen Covey was quoted as saying, "The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities." I will say this over and over. Most humans cannot multitask. I have a friend of mine, and she has a job where she has to review and analyze documents for accuracy and completeness. The other day, she was telling me that when she gets interrupted and the interruption lasts for several minutes, she loses her train of thought. And then when she goes back to what she was doing, she has to get back to the point where she was at before she left. She says this is very difficult. Has that ever happened to you? You get interrupted, and when you go back, it seems like you have to start all over. It's happened to me, and it's frustrating. That frustration you are experiencing is due to something called context switching. Context switching causes the brain to reorient itself to the current task at hand, and that process can take an average of 23 minutes. When leading a virtual team, be mindful that your teammates may have things scheduled for that day. Be mindful that you are not causing them to context switch to tasks that are not planned. If you want to have an in-depth conversation with them, schedule a meeting. Even if it's a quick 15 or 20 minute meeting, call them and schedule it. What I do is I will send a text or a chat message saying, do you have some time to chat? A lot of times they may say, I'm about to start a WebEx or I'm in the middle of something. I don't get upset. I just say, hit me up when you're done. If I have not scheduled the meeting, I look at my request as an interruption to their day. If they are putting first things first and they stop every time I had a question, that's counterproductive, causes context switching, and probably frustrates them. When leading virtual teams, put first things first and expect the same from the team. The fourth principle is think win-win. When leading a virtual team, what are some of the wins for your team? Just think about it. Some of the wins are, number one, custom environment. You get to set up your working environment any way you want. It's in your home. Number two, cozy clothes. You get to dress casually. Now, I know I'm dressed casually right now, and this is kind of my normal dress since I live here in Hawaii, but just think about it. You get to not have to put on a suit or not have to put on business casual every day. Number three, no office distractions. That person that normally stops by to talk for 20 or 30 minutes, that person's just not there. Zero commuting. This is big. This is a huge win. This equals more money in your pocket. When I was in Vegas, I spent about $60 per week to getting back and forth to work. So being here and teleworking, that's like getting a $3,100 raise because $60 per week over a 52-week span, that's over $3,000. You don't have to sit in traffic. My commute was about 45 minutes each way. And now my commute is about 45 seconds to get from downstairs to upstairs. More time with the loved ones. It's cool seeing more of your family. And if you don't like being with your family, there's something wrong with that. These are wins for both you and your team. Make an effort to remind the team that being part of a virtual team is a win-win for all. The fifth principle is seek first to understand, then to be understood. As a virtual team leader, seek to understand any challenges that may arise from working remotely. Be mindful that not everyone is prepared to work from home. There are challenges that arise when working virtually. Some of the challenges that could arise are discipline to stay on task. Some people may not have the discipline to work autonomously. Well, talk to them about that and help them work through that. Working slowly. Sometimes people will put off today what can be done tomorrow. And working from home, that makes it a lot easier. But once again, if you're looking for that and you're helping your team through that, it'll work out for everyone. Number three is a quiet workspace. Understand that not everyone has a 400 square foot soundproof office. They have other people in the house while they're working. They have kids that might be in the house. So be mindful of that. Slower Wi-Fi connection. With all the demands put on video conferencing, a fast internet connection is a must. So if someone has a slower connection, be cognizant of that and help them through that. Number five, immediate feedback or direction. Some people need more feedback or direction than others. Sometimes people will wait on an answer from you before they complete a project or task. I'm the exact opposite. My favorite 5 words from my bosses are, Chris, you make the decision. Number 6, isolation. Earlier, I mentioned that some people may have a challenge because of lack of a quiet space. On the other coin, or on the other side of that, some people may live alone, and going to work was their interaction with other people. So now they're at home in a quiet spot by themselves. So be mindful of that. The takeaway is to understand that your teammates' virtual situation before you make a judgment regarding their work. See, I'm thinking about my team's feelings. My wife always tells me I'm so empathetic. Not really, but I'm working on it. Don't judge me. The sixth principle is to synergize. Being a virtual team leader, you have to create synergy. You have to be able to problem solve with those who have a different point of view. Working as a virtual team leader does not abdicate the duties of being the person that fosters teamwork, open-mindedness, and problem solving. I asked one of my teammates the question about building synergy, and he responded with great points. And his points, I totally agree with them. The first one was ensure that a team is set up for success. Have the tools in place and provide ample training, especially with technology. The second thing he talked about was remember you will no longer have the beauty of casual conversations while in passing in the office. So compensate by planning casual check-in sessions. Number 3, make yourself excessively accessible and available to your team to reach out to you if they have any questions. Some may be hesitant to do so. Provide a welcoming environment and excessively state your availability. Always tell your team members you're available. You can't have an open door policy, but you can have an open video policy. Put in place tools and set defined expectations so that you can track productivity without having to always ask, what are you doing? When we ask that, it may diminish the trust, and that's the last thing we want to do. We don't want our teammates to think that, hey, my boss or the other guys, they don't trust me. Remember, to lead a virtual team, you must continue to build synergy within the team. The seventh principle is sharpen the saw. In the book, The 7 Habits, it defines sharpening the saw as preserving and enhancing the greatest asset you have. And that's you, that's yourself. To lead a virtual team, we have to take care of ourselves and promote self-development and self-care to our teammate. The areas or examples of activities that help self-development and self-care are physical, which encompasses eating right, exercising, and getting enough rest. Social, which encompasses making social and meaningful connections with others. It's hard when you're working from home or when you're working virtually, but you can still make connections with people through electronic means. I spoke earlier about working from home helped you spend more time with your family also, so that's another connection you can make. Mental activities such as learning, reading, writing, and teaching. Now, teaching is one of my favorite things to do. I get the best feeling when I teach someone a principle and they may not have heard of it. When leading virtual teams, we must be continual learners in several areas. For me, those areas are faith, family, fitness, and finance. And I reiterate this to my teammates. When leading virtual teams, don't be afraid to share continuous improvement ideas. I share these videos and I share other things that I do continually to improve myself. In the next 3 months, I will complete my speaking certification through the John Maxwell program. I will complete an executive leadership course through American University, and I'm teaching a project management class at DeVry this semester. Every time I teach a class, I learn something new from one of the students. When leading virtual teams, we must be continual learners, and we must continue to sharpen our saw. In this video, we have discussed the 7 principles we should consider when leading a virtual team. And we have taken the principles from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and talked about those also. Those were 1, be proactive. 2, begin with the end in mind. 3, put first things first. 4, think win-win. 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. 6, synergize. And 7, sharpen the saw. I hope you found value in this video. If you did, please subscribe, like, and leave comments. Also, if you think someone you know can benefit from this information, please send a link to that person. I will post a video every Saturday. My name is Christopher Houston. Thank you very much. Good night and God bless.